Good morning and welcome to A Closer Look. I'm your host, Linda Fontaine. Today my guests are Tom Reed and Terry Snow.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Now, Tom, you are the founder of Miami Models.
In South Beach, yes.
At South Beach. You're a photographer and all this kind of
And
thing.
I own a modeling agency, yes.
But that's not necessarily why you're here today.
No.
Tell me, what brought you to our area?
Okay, good question. Well, being in the film business my entire life, I was pretty much, I guess, encouraged by my late father, Dr. Howard Reed, who was also a politician and an attorney, to stop focusing so much on everyone else and start focusing on something that took place with our family back in 1969. And it's a interesting piece. My family owned a diner called The Village on the Green in Sheffield, Massachusetts, which has been the subject of about 6 or 7 TV shows or documentaries, if you will. And it became historically famous in a lot of ways, or renowned, because there was a UFO incident back in the 60s that involved our diner, and because it was the only eatery, it had a rare dynamic of a lot of different people that would come in there and talk and that sort of thing. So when they saw these things in the sky, if you will, it became, there was a lot of a paper trail, police reports, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And there was radio archives. And so our restaurant ended up being mentioned, or the event, at the United Nations on October 2nd, 1992, the same day that we lost our late father, who was also a politician. So there was a lot of interest on what really happened, you know, the conspiracy thing, and there was a lot of talk about, you know, did he know something, was he, you know, that kind of thing. And so with that, the historians in Massachusetts looked into it, and they found, you know, the witnesses of that time period are now bankers and lawyers and doctors. And with that said, they actually voted on it in 2015 to see if it was historically significant enough to be deemed true history to Massachusetts. And it got inducted, and it was inducted by the state historians and Governor Charles D. Baker. So we actually have the very first UFO-related incident to ever be inducted into the U.S. as historically true. Now, I live in Tennessee now, and so the polygraph tests and one of the detectives and doctors and those kind of things that we were asked to meet with or talk to about this, because it was so long ago, was all done here. And so I ran into Terry on a film a while back, and there's a beautiful studio right here in town, and so that entire piece about our family is going to be shot right here in East Tennessee.
That is wild.
It
okay, so how old were you when this happened? Did you say where this happened? What state and what town?
Oh,
were you in?
Massachusetts, Sheffield, Massachusetts, and I was just almost 10 years old.
Almost 10 years old.
Yeah.
So around 1970 or so?
69.
69.
Summer of '69. Yep.
Fall, actually.
Oh, September
It was Labor
1st.
Day. It was actually Labor Day.
Yeah.
And that's why there were so many witnesses, because there were barbecues. And so many people saw this as groups of people. There was 250 witnesses. It was just on Ancient Aliens.
Well, what exactly happened?
Well, I was riding in a horse show. I used to ride as a child.
Okay, so
And
like equestrian kind of thing? Or?
just, you know, a little race, horse race, you know,
Okay.
kid stuff, jumping, whatever. And we had left Ski Butternut, which is also pretty well renowned. And we were going back to our diner, Village on the Green, and we decided to take a shortcut after making a night deposit drop and clean the place up, because we left it open later because it was a holiday. And we went through this bridge that we very seldom ever went through. It was a shortcut, if you will. And it was getting late, and we had to go to bed, you know. And as we came through the bridge, we saw what looked like, my grandmother actually was with us, my grandmother, my mother, and my brother. And we actually saw lights come in that, I guess through the boards or whatever. My grandmother thought that the headlights of the car just didn't seem to make sense with the amount of light in the bridge. And so when we came through the bridge, my grandmother, who was in the passenger seat, had turned around and looked back and also saw me giving a candy to my brother and said, "Oh, don't give him that, he could choke, it was a fireball."
Okay.
And so she was kind of staring this way, and then she saw this light kind of move up, what looked like maybe it was round, about 4 times the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, and it rose up along the waterway. I was there, I saw it. I saw this myself. And it went across a field, and we went down the road, and there was a line of trees between us, and my mother pulled the car off to the side of the road near a telephone pole, and we all just kind of looked at it, and this thing kind of faded out, and then we saw what looked like a giant turtle shell. And I'll never forget it. I know how crazy it sounds to people, but we saw that. And what was interesting is the next morning, back in the day, we had a jukebox in the diner, so it was always cranking, you know, people hung out there because it was, you know, playing, you know, different, you know, basically everyone else had a name radio. So they would come to the restaurant for the music afterwards, a shake or whatever. So it was always packed with people. And the radio station, my mother just put on the radio because everyone was telling her, look, you're what you saw last night's on the radio, you know. And so all these people were calling in, and those eating in our diner were like, that's my cousin, that's my relative. You know, all these people were on the radio through this WSBS radio actually aired it. And so the whole community was aware of it. And there were arguments on the bus and in school, and kids were all drawing what they saw. And so it just became such a, you know, it was seen by 250 people in 5 different towns, and you could actually follow its path
down
from Pittsfield down the Housatonic River. And so with that said, later on in life, my father suggested I, you know, do something with it and maybe write about it or preserve it for what it was, because it was getting turned into a circus. And it is getting turned into a circus. And so Terry and I want to set it straight as to what was really seen and how this actually got inducted into state. Because a lot of people think, oh, the governor inducted an alien story. No, that's not true. He inducted the fact that our diner had altered the natural progression of the community, which has been written in the papers in the Boston Globe and everything else, because it was historically significant to the point where it altered people's lives forever. And just like it was mentioned to me by the director of the Historical Society that if Billy the Kid had just robbed a train one day, he just would have been another cowboy with a gun. But because he did it for 3 or 4 years, he altered the railroad. Because he altered the railroad, he was historically significant. Our diner altered the community.
And why was it your diner?
It was the only eatery, and it's where everybody ate and heard.
So that's where everybody was hanging out and talking about what they saw.
It was the hub. It was the hub. And
hub.
because our family saw it and had the restaurant, just like when you go to get your hair done, someone, you know, they know more about you than most people because you're talking. Well, our diner became like that, and there were people that would come in our diner smelling like horse manure because there was farmland, right? And it would clear the place out. And then you had a lot of New Yorkers coming in because it was a horse racing track there also. And so you had these people that were getting into push and shove situations because these locals were being kind of belligerent about the whole subject. So it created police reports. And one of the chief of police, his son actually went on record, who's now very well off, Galata, and had written letters to the Historical Society. WSBS, who broadcast their incident back in 1969, their letter actually hangs in the Roswell Museum. And they've also been on several shows with us as well, because I think everybody involved in this thing is so ready to tell it honestly and truthfully, because everybody's reputation's on the line. You know, just because you see something that other people may not understand or be willing to accept doesn't mean it didn't happen. You know, we've got a lot of history that we're not proud of, but it's history. And what this was, we don't know. We had, you know, you have Command Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, Electric Boat, the Groton Naval Base, Sikorsky, GE. You know, there was a lot of military manufacturing facilities that are still there today. You know, the Cold War, the mountains, the Nike missile sites. Who knows what we really saw, but we saw it.
Okay,
and
so
you can't deny
that you
250 people saw it. And there's a paper trail, and it was mentioned at the United Nations. So it needs to be told truthfully for a change, not turned into this, you know, it's been blown out of proportion to the point where the governor and the Historical Society and many of the witnesses are ready now to say, look, you know, I'll go on record, but you know, for God's sakes, you know, let's not, you know, our family's reputation is also, you know, on the line here.
So where does Terry come into this story?
Well, actually, I had just graduated film school, and I was filming a short film here in East Tennessee, and one of the actresses was like, "Do you know Tom Reed? You know, he worked." You know, because Tom, you know, he became a successful photographer. He was working with CSI and Transporter 2 and all that stuff. He's like, do you know this guy? He lives in town. You're doing your short film. Get him to make a cameo or something. I was like, oh yeah, sure. This guy's worked on a bunch of big stuff. He's a famous photographer. And so we brought him in, and then that's when he unleashed this story on me. And I was like, just taken aback. I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Inducted into history, true and historically significant. I need to know more. And then after that, we've just been getting together, and I was like, well,
let's do it.
Yeah, he was worried, you know, like he said, he's worried about people's reputation. The Historical Society and the governor, they're, you know, they don't want it to turn into a circus, and every little 7-minute clips on ancient aliens and stuff like that, you don't really get the full story. So this is really our opportunity for a long-form film to get everything included and to tell it the right way.
With the actual participants.
With the actual participants.
On location, and then we're going to redo the reenactments here.
Yeah.
Okay, and
yeah.
so you said this is going to be like a docudrama. Is it a mini-series? Is it one film or is it a few? How's that going to be?
Well, we have two offers, basically.
Well, right now we're looking at an hour and a half to 2 hour documentary with reenactments. Shooting a lot of the reenactments in East Tennessee, as the terrain is similar to the Great Barrington area, as well as we can shoot it during the winter here, the reenactments. And there's some parts in Tennessee that still look like it's summer in the winter. So that's really the benefit of shooting in East Tennessee.
Now, what studio's behind this? Do you have them?
Right now we're working with Primordic Studios in Irwin, Tennessee to shoot our teaser trailer.
There it is.
And yep, right there. Yeah, that's us shooting our teaser trailer just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
We're also working with a lot of the companies around here. Our director of photography just worked on Murder Comes to Town with Discovery ID. Our assistant director worked on Fatal Attraction on Oxygen. So there's a lot of ties to East Tennessee. And like Tom said, when it got inducted in 2015, he was living in East Tennessee. So he took his polygraph here.
And he's willing to go on record, too.
Yeah, he took his polygraph here. The doctor that they sent to his family to make sure, psych evals and stuff like that. And also the detective are all from East Tennessee, so.
Okay, we've just begun, it sounds like, on this story. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and learn more about this very interesting topic.